I still remember the exact moment my world shattered. Standing outside the house I built with my bare hands, only to see the name on the mailbox wasn't mine anymore. My brother's smile in that real estate photo haunted me. They sold it without even telling me. "It's just a house," they said. But it wasn't. It was everything I fought for, everything I lost. I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I walked away, and for years I said nothing, but silence doesn't mean surrender. When I came back, I didn't knock. I owned the keys. And this time, they would regret ever locking me out. The email came on a Monday morning, a subject line so casual it felt like a slap. "Guess who just bought the old place?" I clicked, not expecting much. But there it was, a photo of Derek, my older brother, standing in front of the white brick porch of our childhood home, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. My stomach dropped. That house wasn't just any house. It was the place I learned to draw blueprints, rearrange furniture in my head, dream about becoming something more than what our little town allowed. That house was mine. At least it should have been. I scrolled down. A message from Mom. "Your brother finally got it. Isn't it nice to see it back in the family? You've always been too modern for that kind of simplicity, Natalie." No punctuation, no acknowledgement that I had offered, begged, to buy the house 5 years ago. No mention of the night I cried on the porch steps when they told me it was off the market. "We're keeping it in the family," they had said. But apparently I didn't count. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I closed the laptop, stood up, and walked to the kitchen. I poured coffee with hands too steady, too calm. I even smiled, but the mirror by the fridge told the truth. Eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched. I didn't cry. Not yet. I had already cried enough for them. That night, I couldn't sleep. Memories I hadn't summoned in years came flooding back. Mom calling me the responsible one, Dad handing Derek the keys to his first car while telling me I didn't need one in college. Derek smashing my Lego castle when we were 7 and getting a pat on the back because he's just a boy. And the worst of them, the day I got the acceptance letter to Rye SD, the school I dreamed of, only to be told I should stay home, help take care of Dad during his surgery. Derek was too busy with his new girlfriend, so I stayed, I deferred, and I never went. The house was supposed to be a chance to reclaim something. I had offered cash, more than market value. I even hired a contractor to draft a renovation plan that kept the original wood beams I loved as a kid. My parents smiled politely, said they'd think about it, then stopped responding to my messages. I thought maybe they needed time. Turns out they needed Derek. He didn't even like that house growing up. He called it cramped and ugly. He kicked a hole in the bedroom wall once during a tantrum and blamed me for it. I took the fall. As always, I called Mum once, after the email. Just once. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Her voice was breezy, like she'd been waiting for me. "Hi, sweetheart, isn't it great? Derek's finally settling down. He even wants to plant a garden, just like your father used to dream of." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then, softly, "You sold it to him." A pause. Then, "Well, he made an offer. A very generous one, and he's going to keep it in the family, which is what matters. You wouldn't have lived there anyway, with your job and all." "I told you I was moving back," I said. "I told you I was serious." Another pause, then the knife. "You always were too sentimental, Nat. It's just a house." No, I wanted to scream. It wasn't. It was Saturday mornings on the porch swing. It was the attic where I built fairy castles out of cardboard. It was the kitchen where Mom taught me to make cinnamon rolls before she decided I wasn't soft enough to be a good girl. It was the last place I saw myself as part of something, and they handed it away like an old sweater. I hung up without saying goodbye. Later that week, a friend from Oregon sent me a link. Derek had posted a walkthrough video of the newly renovated house on his YouTube channel. Modern lighting, grey walls, open concept. My heart broke a little at each frame. He'd gutted the soul out of it. In the comments, strangers gushed about the transformation. So clean! Looks like a designer home. I wanted to scream. It already was. Then came the final shot. Derek smiling into the camera, arms crossed, standing where our family photo used to hang. Sometimes, he said, you just have to take something old and make it better. The screen went black. I closed the tab. I didn't scream. I didn't write a furious email. I didn't tell him off. I didn't post anything. But I made a promise to myself that night. I would not forget, and I would not forgive, not yet. I didn't plan to go back, not at first, but curiosity is a cruel kind of hunger. And that house was a wound that hadn't scabbed. So 3 weeks later, I flew to Oregon without telling a soul. I didn't even rent a car. I took a cab from the airport and had the driver drop me off a block away. I wanted to see it again, on my terms. It looked different, slicker. The porch had been sanded down and repainted a trendy slate grey. The white bricks were now charcoal black. The front yard stripped of the lavender bushes I planted as a teen. 2 modern chairs sat where the old swing used to creak. There were no signs of Derek's presence, no truck in the driveway, no signs of life. Just a small, sleek plaque by the door. Hearthstay. Premier, designer comfort in historic cottage. My stomach turned. He'd turned our home into an Airbnb. I walked closer. Through the large new window, I saw minimalist furniture, a white washed kitchen, framed art prints that had never hung there before. But what stopped me cold was a massive photo above the fireplace, our old family portrait. I hadn't seen it in years. Me at 16, smiling too hard. Derek leaning into Mum. Dad's hand on Derek's shoulder, not mine. I blinked. Below it, a framed placard. Built with love, restored by a son. I rang the doorbell. A man in a polo shirt opened the door halfway, clipboard in hand. Sorry, the unit's not available for tours today. I'm not a tourist, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I grew up here. He blinked. You're Natalie? I nodded. I was told you might show up, he said awkwardly. I'm really sorry, but I've been instructed not to let you in without written consent from the owner. I laughed, sharp and bitter. The owner? My brother? He nodded apologetically, then closed the door gently. I stood there for a long time until the sun dipped behind the trees. Then I walked to the side of the house and peeked through the old basement window, my childhood hideout. It was empty now, gutted, but something caught my eye. A blinking red light tucked beneath a shelf. I pressed my face closer, a camera still on. Later that night, I booked a room at a nearby inn and started digging. I found the Airbnb listing Derek created. It was worse than I expected. He had written a long, sappy description of how he reclaimed his childhood home after years apart and honoured his late grandfather's craftsmanship. Photos of our family, my art projects, even the original fireplace I begged him to keep. all paraded as part of the emotional heritage of the property. I scrolled further and saw the icing on the cake, a link to a local news interview Derek gave. "I was always drawn back to this house," he said, "but my sister had her big city dreams. I stayed behind. I wanted to preserve what mattered." The liar. The next day, I visited the county clerk's office. I had a name, a date, and a gut instinct. What I found nearly made me drop the folder. 4 years ago, Derek had taken out a loan on the house. Over $200,000. The paperwork was signed by both him and me, except I never signed it. The signature was mine, but not mine. A perfect imitation. Too perfect. I called a lawyer. Then I called a private investigator. 2 weeks later, the PI handed me a thick envelope. Inside were photos, records, and something I didn't expect. A bank statement from my parents' joint account showing a massive withdrawal 3 years ago. The note attached, "Funds transferred to Derek Peterson for business capital." It was their retirement fund. There was more. My mother's email account had been compromised, but the investigator retrieved fragments. One, dated 6 months before the house sale, was addressed to Derek. "She'll ask for it. Just keep saying no. Don't let her back in. You know how she makes us feel. I can't take another lecture about fairness. Just push her away. She never belonged here anyway." I stared at the words until they blurred. Had I really made them feel ashamed? Or did I just remind them of what they chose to ignore? That night, I packed my bag. I was ready to go, to disappear again. But the universe had one more trick to play. As I was checking out of the inn, a woman tapped my shoulder. Grey hair, sun-wrinkled eyes, she introduced herself as Mrs. Callahan, our old next-door neighbour. "I heard you were in town," she said. "Didn't think you'd come back after what happened." I gave a tight smile. "I didn't either." She reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. "This was in a box of old electronics I found in the attic after the last storm. I think it's yours, or should be." I took it with trembling fingers. "What is it?" "Security footage. Your dad had cameras installed after Derek's suspension from school. You never knew, did you?" I shook my head. She looked me dead in the eye. "You should watch it, honey. Some truths deserve to be remembered." Later, in the silence of a hotel room 2 states away, I plugged it in. And what I saw changed everything I thought I knew about my family. I didn't plan on seeing the TikTok. It found me. A friend had forwarded it with a laughing emoji and the caption, "Isn't this your brother?" I clicked the link, expecting another awkward real estate tour. Instead, there was Derek standing outside our childhood home, now stripped of its last remaining charm. "Just sold the old place," he announced, voice too cheerful. "Taking this baby into the future. Crypto, baby." I froze. The house. Sold? He spun the camera around, showing off a shiny new sports car and a cheap champagne bottle. "Sometimes, to grow, you got to let go. Let's get rich or die trying." The video cut there. My hands trembled as I watched the view count climb. So he sold it. Just like that. For some digital coin toss, it felt like losing the house all over again. But this time, it wasn't about nostalgia. It was the final proof. They never saw me as more than an afterthought. The house, the history, me. We were just assets to liquidate. A week later, I ran into Ellie, my best friend from childhood, at a small cafe in Portland. I hadn't told her I was in town, but fate had a cruel sense of humour. She dropped her latte when she saw me. "Oh my God, Natalie, I thought you were in Europe or something." I shook my head. "Not quite." She hesitated, eyes scanning my face. "You look different." "I am," I said, "more than you know." We sat in awkward silence for a moment, then she leaned in. "I always meant to ask, why didn't you go to Harvard? You were accepted, right?" I nodded. "Full ride." I remember I was so jealous. "But then, your parents told everyone you turned it down, said it was too far, that you didn't want the pressure." I laughed bitterly. "They said that?" "Yeah," she whispered, "but I overheard your mum once at the grocery store. She told Mrs. Keller we needed someone to clean up after Jim's surgery. Derek had a girlfriend. Natalie didn't." I said nothing, just stared into my coffee, trying to remember the exact moment I stopped being their daughter and became their unpaid maid. Back in my hotel, I opened my old email account, the one I hadn't checked in years. Among the spam, I found a folder marked Bank. Inside, dozens of unread messages from an account I didn't recognise, all confirming wire transfers, balances, and authorisations. One email caught my eye, a notification from First Capital Bank dated 8 years ago. "Your account has been debited. $75,000. Transaction approved." I had never opened an account at First Capital Bank. The name on the account was mine. I printed every document and sent them straight to my lawyer. Then I did one more thing. I walked into the county records office and filed for a legal name change. Natalie Peterson died that day, quietly, without a eulogy. And someone else took her place. I deleted my social media, emptied my accounts, left no forwarding address. For months, I existed only in the background, an untraceable shadow. Friends texted, some called, rumours bloomed online. I had eloped, I had moved abroad, I had died, but I wasn't dead, I was rebuilding. Using funds recovered from the forged bank account, and with the help of my lawyer, I bought 3 small cottages on the coast, each one renovated to look like some version of the house I had lost. Warm wood, soft lights, fireplaces, wraparound porches. I called them Homeward. The brand grew fast. Word of mouth, quiet luxury, no flashy ads, no personal photos, just warmth, comfort, nostalgia curated and bottled. People came from all over to stay in a place that reminded them of somewhere they never quite belonged. I hired a documentary filmmaker to help craft the story. Not mine exactly, but a version of it. The story of a woman betrayed by blood, abandoned by family, who built her own world out of the ashes. We shot it in shadow. My voice was disguised, my name left unspoken. The video opened with a line, "Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself." The clip went viral in under a week. Tens of thousands of comments poured in. Women, men, sons, daughters. People saying, "This is my story. I see myself in her. Thank you for saying it." And then it happened. My mother shared the video on Facebook. She captioned it, "Beautiful, so brave." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Minutes later, Derek reposted it on his own feed, writing, "This hits hard. Family isn't always who you think." I almost laughed. They didn't recognise me. Not even a little, and somehow that was the most satisfying part. They shared my pain. They celebrated my resurrection. And they had no idea It was their own daughter behind the mask. The auction was quiet, unlisted, and open to vetted buyers only. I entered through a proxy, a shell company I created months earlier. No one suspected a thing. Derek was desperate. The crypto crash had gutted him, the IRS was circling, and the house had been sitting empty, bleeding money through unpaid taxes and maintenance fees. He needed out fast and cheap. I got it for less than what I'd offered my parents 5 years ago. The day of the town's fall harvest festival, the street in front of our old home buzzed with booths and banners, children in flannel running wild, the air thick with cinnamon and nostalgia. It was the perfect place for a reveal. I hadn't planned it that way, but sometimes the world writes poetry better than you ever could. The house had been renovated again, this time back to itself. The porch swing restored, the old shutters painted that familiar, faded blue. I even had the lavender replanted, no flashy signage, no sterile grey walls, just warmth. A memory made real again. A small podium was set up near the gate. People assumed it was part of the festival. They gathered when the music dimmed and a volunteer announced, "The new owner of the Peterson house would like to say a few words." I stepped forward. No one recognised me at first. I was dressed in black, hair pulled tight, no makeup. A woman without a name, just a voice. Most of you knew this place as the Peterson home. Maybe you trick-or-treated here. Maybe you played tag in this yard. Maybe you just drove past and thought, nice porch. But for some of us, it was everything. And then, one day, it was gone, sold, dismantled, gutted, stripped of its soul. Whispers rippled through the crowd. My parents stood near the back. Derek beside them, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. I took a breath. I didn't buy this house to take revenge, I said. I bought it to bury what happened here, to reclaim what I lost, not just walls and windows, but a version of myself that deserved to exist. Gasps, then silence, and then recognition. My mother's hands flew to her mouth. Derek stepped forward, eyes wide. "Natalie, wait, I raised a hand, calm and firm. This is the part where justice begins. That night, I hosted a private screening in the newly restored living room. Guests were handpicked, lawyers, local reporters, neighbours who'd known us, some who hadn't. I played the footage Mrs. Callahan gave me. Blurry, dated, but undeniable. A teenage Derek shoving me into a wall. Me crying, bruised, Dad walking in, glancing, then walking away. Another clip. Derek signing papers with a smile, documents later used to take out a loan in my name. Then came the emails, printed, verified, my mother's words in black and white. Push her away, she never belonged here anyway. The room stayed silent when the screen went dark. My parents tried to recover. They claimed the footage was doctored, that the memories were fuzzy, that I had always been too sensitive. They threatened legal action. I was ready. I presented notarized contracts, financial records, a forensic handwriting report, and 2 witnesses, including my old art teacher who remembered the day I broke down in her classroom after being told I couldn't leave for Harvard. Derek stood to speak. "I messed up, okay? I was young," I cut in. "You were 17 when you hit me, 25 when you forged my signature, 32 when you sold the house for Bitcoin." "At what point does young stop being an excuse?" my mother cried. Not the graceful kind. This was messy, snot-filled, gasping. She stepped toward me, arms trembling. "Why would you do this to your own mother?" I didn't flinch. You did it first. Later, when the crowd had thinned and the cameras were gone, I stood at the porch, watching as my family walked away. Not once did they look back. I held out a small silver key. A woman approached, mid-30s, 2 kids in tow. She'd lost her job during the pandemic, lived out of her car for 6 months, then a shelter. She was quiet, polite, didn't ask why I chose her. "This house is yours now," I said. "1-year lease, no rent. After that, we talk." Her eyes welled up. "Why?" I smiled. "Because someone once told me I didn't belong here. I want you to know that you do." Behind us, my mother was still sobbing. Derek stood, stone-faced, hollow. The woman took the key. They stayed to watch, but I didn't. I turned, walked down the porch steps, and didn't look back. The fallout wasn't immediate. It never is. But it came. Within a week of the community screening, people started whispering, then avoiding. The Peterson name, once synonymous with warm cookies and PTA meetings, now summoned quiet disgust. Neighbours who used to wave at my mother on her morning walks crossed the street. Local stores stopped carrying Derek's business flyers. Old friends stopped calling. Some blocked them outright. My mother took it the hardest. She stopped leaving the house altogether. When the local paper ran an editorial titled "When Silence Protects Abuse," featuring our story in thinly veiled anonymity, she collapsed. My aunt called to say she'd been admitted to a private facility for nervous exhaustion. Derek was harder to track. Last I heard, he'd left the state. A friend of a friend said he was couch surfing in Arizona, broke, bitter, trying to launch another YouTube channel under a fake name. He reached out once, a single-line email, "You win." I didn't reply. The video we'd made, the story of betrayal, healing and reinvention, went viral again. This time with my face. I uploaded it myself. No disguises, no filters. I wanted to be seen. Millions watched. Millions commented. That was my mum. My brother did the same. Thank you for surviving, for all of us who couldn't. I stopped counting the views after the first 2 million. I didn't care about fame. I cared about truth. For the first time in my life, I wasn't editing myself to fit into someone else's narrative. And then one morning, a thick white envelope appeared at my doorstep. No return address, just my new name, handwritten in a shaky scrawl. Inside was a letter from a law firm I recognised. Local. Attached to it was a notarised document, a last will and testament. Mrs. Callahan, the neighbour who had given me the flash drive, had passed away. She left everything to me, her house, her land, her savings. "Because you didn't give up," the letter read. "Because you fought when I couldn't. Because I saw you, Natalie, even when they didn't." I sat in the hallway for hours, the letter in my lap, the past pressing in like fog. She had watched me grow up, watched me survive. And when she saw her chance to pass something forward, she chose me. I visited her house that evening, walking slowly through rooms that smelled of peppermint and dust. On the mantel, a single photo, me, age 10, holding a painting of a tree. She must have taken it from a school event. I never knew she'd kept it. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Instead, I began drafting plans. Within a month, we had permits. Within 3, construction. The new building stood between Mrs. Callahan's house and my own, an extension made from soft brick and reclaimed wood. We named it The Nest. A transitional home for women escaping emotionally abusive families. Free room, counselling, job placement. Not just a shelter, a launch pad. Every room was filled within weeks. One afternoon, I stood at the garden fence, clipboard in hand, watching a little girl help her mother plant strawberries. Their laughter spilled across the yard like light. That's when I saw her, my mother. She stood at the edge of the sidewalk, dressed in grey, thinner than I remembered. Her hands clutched her purse like a lifeline. She didn't try to cross the fence, didn't wave, just looked. At the house, the garden, the joy she had never made space for. She didn't recognise the woman who stood beside me, the one with her hand on the child's shoulder, gently showing her how to guide the plant's roots. And I didn't try to remind her. She turned and left. That was the last time I saw her. A week later, I finished the final restoration. The old gate, rusted and heavy, now bore a new inscription. I brought out the brick myself. It was small, rough-edged, still damp from cleaning. On it, I had written one word, Peterson. The name they gave me, the name they used to erase me, the name I shed like a snake's skin and reclaimed like a sword. I placed it at the base of the gate, among dozens of others. Names of women who had passed through our doors, names they chose, names that meant freedom. And as I stood there, dusk gathering like a soft shawl across the sky, I whispered, not a curse, not a prayer, just a promise. You didn't break me. You taught me how to build. The invitation came folded in a crisp red envelope, simple and elegant. On the front, a single embossed logo, TED. Inside, a personal note from the curation team. Your story is not just inspiring, it's necessary. We would be honoured if you shared it on our stage. I stared at it for a long time, letting the weight of the moment sink in. Years ago, I was invisible, even in my own family. Now I had the chance to speak, not for vengeance, but for freedom. The theme that year was becoming. My talk was titled, I didn't take revenge, I took my life back. The stage lights were warm but not blinding. The crowd blurred into shadows. I didn't memorize the speech, I didn't need to. I told the story the way it happened, not as a victim, not as a warrior, but as a woman who rebuilt herself from wreckage. I used to think silence was survival, I said, that staying quiet made me strong. But silence is not peace, it's just another prison. I spoke of the house, of the betrayal, of walking away, not in defeat, but in defiance. And I ended with this. I was told I didn't belong, that I was too much, too emotional, too distant, too independent. But I am exactly who I needed to be, to heal, to help others, to become more than what they reduced me to. I didn't take revenge. I took freedom. And freedom, once you taste it, is something you'll never give up again. When I stepped off stage, there was a standing ovation, not for perfection, but for truth. After the talk, messages flooded in. Survivors, mothers, daughters, strangers, people who had never spoken their pain but now felt less alone. One message arrived via handwritten letter, no return address, no name, just 2 pages filled with aching gratitude. You saved me, the letter said. I was at the edge. Your story pulled me back. I left. I started over. And now I breathe again. Thank you for showing me it's possible. It was signed, A Sister in Shadow. I kept the letter in my drawer, not for ego, but for remembrance. Back in Oregon, the Natalie Foundation was growing. What started as a small fund to cover rent for women in transition had expanded into scholarships, legal aid, counselling. That year, we launched our education initiative, covering tuition and school supplies for local girls from volatile homes. We called it Project Light. The applications poured in, stories that mirrored mine. Girls who dreamed big in homes that told them they were too much, too loud, too ambitious. We told them the opposite. We told them they were just enough. Hope became a tangible word, and it became a person. She came to me through a friend of a friend, 9 years old, big eyes, quiet voice, a history that mirrored my own in ways too painful to ignore. The system called her troubled. I called her strong. After months of guardianship, the adoption went through. I gave her my last name, my real one, not Peterson, the one I chose. We called her Hope. On the anniversary of the nest's opening, we held a small celebration, nothing extravagant, just a garden gathering, string lights, music, laughter. People who mattered came, Ellie, the counsellors, the women who found peace within our walls, the children who now smiled freely. I raised a glass and said, "Some people are born into family, others build it. This," I looked around, "this is mine." Hope sat beside me, holding my hand. She wore a yellow dress and a smile that made the past feel distant. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was proving anything. I was simply living. Later that night, after the last guest left, I walked alone through the garden and toward the house. The old one. My old room still had the marks on the closet door where I'd measured my height. I placed my palm against the wood. No bitterness, just memory. Then I walked outside, to the gate. I closed it gently, locked it, not to keep anyone out, but to mark the end of a chapter. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. As I turned away, the wind caught a banner still hanging on the porch. It fluttered, then stilled, revealing a final phrase we had printed months ago. It read, "The best revenge is no revenge. It's becoming everything they told you you couldn't be.